It is 200,000 years ago. You are a human being. You have a brain roughly the same size as mine, roughly the same capacity for thought, emotion, and poor decision-making. You are hungry. You have been hungry for most of the day because finding food is your full-time job, your part-time job, and your entire personality. You have found something to eat. Raw meat, probably. Maybe some roots. Maybe some berries that you are about 70% sure are not going to kill you. You eat it. Your body will spend the next 6 to 8 hours processing it. Your gut, long, slow, expensive, will extract what calories it can. Your brain will get the leftovers. Tonight, like every night, you will climb a tree. Because the ground at night belongs to things that want to eat you, and the only protection you have is altitude. You will sleep badly. You will wake up tired. You will be hungry again by morning. This is your life. This is the life of every human who has ever lived until one night something changes. Something that will shrink your gut, grow your brain, keep you warm, terrify every predator within a kilometer, give you a social life for the first time, inspire every major religion on earth, and produce, as a side effect, every meal you have ever eaten. One thing. Tonight. Subscribe now, because this one starts dark and ends with everything. Act 1. Before fire. Let us be specific about what life looks like before fire. Not vague, not romanticized. Specific. Your day begins at dawn, because dawn is when it is safe to be on the ground. Your day ends at dusk, because dusk is when it is not. That window, roughly 12 hours, is everything. 12 hours to find food, find water, find shelter, avoid being killed, and perform every other function that keeps you alive for another 12 hours. There is no night activity. There is no unwinding after a long day. When the sun goes down, you go up. Into the trees. This is not a metaphor. Homo erectus, your ancestor, roughly 2 million to 100,000 years ago, almost certainly slept in trees. We know this because the skeletal morphology of early humans shows shoulder joints and wrist structures adapted for overhead hanging and climbing, features that are completely unnecessary if you sleep on the ground. Evolution does not keep unnecessary features. If your skeleton is still built for climbing trees, you are still climbing trees. Now let us talk about food. Before fire, the human diet is raw. Everything. All of it. Every calorie you consume today in a form that has been altered by heat, cooked meat, roasted vegetables, baked bread, boiled grains did not exist. Raw meat is hard to chew. It is hard to digest. It takes significant jaw muscle, which early humans had in abundance, to process. And it yields fewer calories per gram than the same meat would yield after cooking. This is the key. A calorie is not a calorie in the way we tend to think about it. What matters is not just how many calories are in a food, but how many your body can actually extract. Raw meat yields roughly 50 to 70% of its available calories. Cooked meat yields closer to 95%. Raw starch, the kind in tubers and roots, is almost completely indigestible. Cooked starch is highly digestible. Raw egg protein is about 50% bioavailable. Cooked egg protein is about 90% bioavailable. In every case, cooking does the same thing. It pre-digests the food. It breaks down cell walls, denatures proteins, gelatinizes starch, all of the work your gut would otherwise have to do, done in advance by heat. This means your gut can be shorter. Your gut can be less energetically expensive. And the energy your gut is no longer spending on digestion can go somewhere else. It went to your brain. The human brain is the most metabolically expensive organ in the body. It consumes roughly 20% of your total caloric intake, while accounting for roughly 2% of your body weight. It is extraordinarily expensive. And for most of human evolution, that expense was the limiting factor on how big it could get. Your ancestor, 2 million years ago, had a brain roughly 400 cubic centimeters in volume. You have a brain roughly 1,400 cubic centimeters in volume. That is 3.5 times larger. Something paid for that. We will come back to what. But first, how did fire even arrive? Act 2. Who found fire? Here is a thing people get wrong about fire. Nobody invented it. Fire is not like the wheel. Fire is not something a clever individual sat down and figured out. Fire existed long before humans did. Lightning has been striking dry grasslands for as long as there have been dry grasslands. Volcanoes have been erupting for as long as there have been volcanoes. The Earth has been setting itself on fire periodically for 4 billion years. What early humans did was not invent fire. What they did was survive it, then approach it, then stay near it, then feed it, then carry it, then eventually make it. These are 5 completely different achievements, separated by potentially hundreds of thousands of years each, and we can track them in the fossil record. The earliest evidence of early humans using fire comes from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. Archaeologists excavating there found burnt bone fragments and plant ash dating to approximately 1 million years ago. 1 million years ago. These were not humans making fire. These were humans bringing fire from somewhere else, a lightning strike, a lava flow, and keeping it alive inside a cave. Think about what that required. You have never seen fire before. You are an animal, and animals are afraid of fire. Every instinct you have says, run. But you don't run. You watch. You notice that the animals who ran are now cold and hungry. You notice that the burning area is warm. You notice that the animals who died in the fire smell interesting. You take one step closer. That step, that single decision to override every survival instinct and approach the thing your every nerve is screaming to avoid, is arguably the most consequential moment in human history. Nobody knows who took it first. Nobody knows when exactly. Nobody knows if it happened once, in one place, or independently in multiple locations across the ancient world. What we know is that by approximately 400,000 years ago, controlled fire use appears to be widespread across the human range. And by roughly 100,000 years ago, humans were not just using fire, they were making it. The earliest known fire-making tools are simple. 2 pieces of wood, one hard, one soft, and enough patience to generate friction until an ember appears. If you have never tried to start a fire with 2 sticks, I recommend it. It will give you a profound new appreciation for matches. And for your ancestors who did this without knowing if it would work, without the concept of it has worked before, and without the option of giving up and ordering delivery, they figured it out. Later came flint and pyrite, striking 2 rocks together to generate a spark. Even later came the fire bow, a more efficient friction system. Each technology built on the last, each generation inheriting the knowledge of the one before. Fire was the first technology that could be taught. And the act of teaching it, of deliberately transferring knowledge from one human to another, may be the origin of human culture. But let us talk about what fire actually solved, because the list is longer than most people realize. Act 3: What fire solved? Fire solves 6 problems simultaneously. No other technology in human history has done this. Not the wheel, not writing, not the internet. One thing, 6 problems, overnight. Problem 1. Predators. Large carnivores, lions, hyenas, saber-toothed cats are afraid of fire. This is not a quirk. This is deep evolutionary programming. Fire means uncontrolled destruction. Fire means no escape. Fire means death. Every large predator that has ever lived learned, across millions of years of natural selection, to avoid fire. Which means that for the first time in the existence of your species, you could sleep on the ground. Not in a tree, on the ground. At a campfire, in a group. The psychological impact of this cannot be overstated. Before fire, every night is a managed survival situation. After fire, something else, something new, something that had no name yet. We might call it safety. Problem 2. Food. We covered this in Act 1, but the practical reality deserves emphasis. Cooked food is not just more digestible. Cooked food is safer. Cooking kills pathogens. E. coli, salmonella, listeria, parasites, all of which exist in raw meat, and raw plants are destroyed by heat. Before fire, foodborne illness is a regular feature of existence. After fire, a significant category of death simply disappears. Cooking also makes more food edible. Many plants that are toxic raw become edible when cooked. Many cuts of meat that are too tough to chew raw become accessible when cooked. The available food supply expanded dramatically, not because more food existed, because more of the existing food was now on the menu. Problem 3. Cold. Homo erectus originated in Africa, but Homo erectus fossils have been found in Georgia, in China, in Indonesia, in Europe. How did a tropical primate colonize a planet that is mostly not tropical? Fire. Fire made temperate climates survivable. Fire made winter survivable. Fire made the migration out of Africa, the expansion that eventually populated the entire Earth, possible. Without fire, modern humans are a tropical species. With fire, modern humans are a planetary species. That is not a small distinction. Problem 4. Darkness. Before fire, the night belonged to other things. After fire, for the first time in the history of the species, humans own the night. A campfire burning through the night extends the usable day by several hours. Hours that were previously lost to darkness and sleep in trees were now available for something else. What did early humans do with those hours? They talked. This is not speculation. We know from studies of contemporary hunter-gatherer societies, the Juhansi of the Kalahari, the Agta of the Philippines, that the content of conversation changes dramatically between day and night. Day conversations are practical. Where is the food? Who is doing what? Logistics. Night conversations by firelight are stories. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner found that 65% of daytime conversations among the Juhansi were about economic and social matters. 81% of nighttime conversations were about stories, myths, histories. The campfire did not just extend the day. It created narrative. It created memory. It created culture. The first storytellers were not authors or poets or filmmakers. They were people sitting around a fire in the dark, telling each other what happened and what it meant. Problem 5. Community. A fire needs tending. This sounds trivial. It is not. For the first time, there is a shared task that benefits everyone and belongs to everyone. Someone has to watch the fire through the night. Someone has to collect wood. Someone has to keep the flame alive. This creates obligation. This creates reciprocity. This creates social structure. The campfire is arguably the first human institution, not government, not religion, trade, a fire that needed keeping. And the group that formed around it, that shared warmth, shared food, shared stories, shared safety, is the prototype of every human community that has ever existed. Problem 6. Brain size. We come back to the brain. The caloric surplus unlocked by cooked food is the most widely accepted explanation for the dramatic increase in brain size that occurs in the Homo erectus lineage beginning roughly 1.8 million years ago. Smaller gut, more available energy, larger brain. This is the cooking hypothesis, first formally proposed by primatologist Richard Wrangham in his 2009 book Catching Fire: How Cooking Made Us Human. Wrangham's argument is elegant. No other dietary change in human evolution coincides with the timing and scale of brain expansion as precisely as the evidence for fire use. It is contested. Some researchers argue the timeline does not fully align. Some argue that meat eating alone could explain part of the brain expansion. Some argue the evidence for early cooking is not robust enough to carry the full weight of the theory. Science is allowed to argue. That is what science is for. But the core observation stands. Humans are the only animals that cook. And humans are the only animals whose brains are dramatically larger than their body size would predict. These two facts are almost certainly not unrelated. Act 4: Fire across civilizations. Here is a pattern worth noticing. Every major civilization in human history developed a myth, a ritual, a religion, or a law specifically about fire. Not about water, not about soil, not about the sun. Fire. This is not a coincidence. This is a memory. A species-level memory of the thing that changed everything, encoded into story, because story is how humans remember what matters most. Let us go through them. Greece. Prometheus. The Greek story is the most famous in the Western world, so let us start there and then go somewhere more interesting. Prometheus was a titan, one of the old gods, predating the Olympians. He stole fire from the gods and gave it to humans. Zeus, furious, had him chained to a rock where an eagle ate his liver every day. His liver regrew overnight. The eagle came back every morning, for eternity. This is considered a punishment. Let us think about what this story is actually saying. Fire is divine. Fire belongs to the gods. For humans to have it is an act of theft against the natural order. And someone, a transgressor, a rebel, a benefactor, paid an infinite price for it. This is not a story about fire as a tool. This is a story about fire as a category violation. The moment humans had fire, they stopped being one kind of thing and became something else. Something the gods needed to punish. Because something that powerful, in the hands of something like us, changes the balance of everything. The Greeks understood this. They just expressed it as mythology, because that was their language for truths too large for prose. China, Shi. Chinese mythology gives us a different story, and a more practical one. Shi, literally the person who drilled wood, is the culture hero credited with teaching humanity to make fire. The story goes that Suiren observed a bird pecking at a particular tree and creating sparks. He spent years watching, then experimenting, then teaching. What is interesting here is not the miracle. There is no theft, no divine transgression. Shi did not steal fire from anywhere. He observed nature, applied intelligence, and shared the result. This is a story about fire as technology, as human ingenuity rather than divine rebellion. Chinese philosophical tradition, particularly Confucian and Taoist thought, tends to locate the extraordinary in the ordinary. The universe contains everything needed. Human intelligence finds it. Shi is not a rebel. He is an engineer. And the Chinese relationship with fire reflects this. Chinese cuisine developed perhaps the most sophisticated fire-based cooking tradition in the world, a tradition in which the control of heat, the precise management of flame, the distinction between wok hei and slow simmer, is considered one of the highest culinary arts. They did not worship fire, they mastered it. India, Agni. In the Hindu tradition, fire is not metaphor. Agni is a god, one of the most important in the Vedic pantheon. He appears in more hymns in the Rig Veda, one of the oldest religious texts in existence, dating to approximately 1500 BCE, than almost any other deity. Agni is the god of fire, yes. But more specifically, Agni is the intermediary. When a Hindu ritual involves offering food, ghee, flowers, incense, that offering is placed in fire, because fire carries the offering to the gods. Fire is the messenger between the human world and the divine world. This is theologically profound, and it is also very old. The Vedic fire ritual, the yagna, is one of the oldest continuously performed religious ceremonies on Earth. It has been practiced with variations for 3,500 years. Think about that. For 3.5 millennia, humans have been placing things in fire and saying, "Carry this upward." The intuition that fire moves things from one realm to another, from the physical to the spiritual, from the human to the divine, appears in cultures that never had contact with each other, on opposite sides of the planet. The Greeks burned offerings at altars. The Romans maintained sacred flames. The Aztecs performed fire ceremonies at the end of each 52-year calendar cycle. The Norse used funeral pyres to carry the dead to the next world. Every culture arrived at the same conclusion. Fire does not stay in one place. It transforms. It moves. It carries things somewhere else. They were describing combustion. They just did not have the chemistry. Aboriginal Australia. Fire as country. The oldest continuous relationship with fire on Earth belongs to Aboriginal Australians. The evidence for Aboriginal fire use in Australia goes back at least 65,000 years, possibly more. But what makes this tradition unique is not just age. It is the sophistication. Aboriginal Australians did not just use fire for warmth and cooking. They used fire to manage the landscape. Cultural burning or fire stick farming, deliberately burning sections of country at specific times of year, was a land management strategy refined over tens of thousands of years. Burning at the right time encourages new plant growth. New plant growth attracts animals. Burning creates fire breaks that prevent catastrophic wildfires. Burning clears undergrowth and makes travel easier. This is ecological engineering. This is sophisticated understanding of how ecosystems respond to disturbance, developed without laboratories, without scientific journals, without universities. Developed by watching for 65,000 years. When European colonizers arrived in Australia and stopped Aboriginal burning practices, they considered it primitive. What followed, over subsequent centuries, were catastrophic wildfires, exactly the kind that systematic burning prevents. The 2019-2020 Australian bushfire season burned more than 18 million hectares. It was described as unprecedented, but it was only unprecedented if you ignored 65,000 years of evidence about what happens when you stop managing fire correctly. Contemporary Australian fire management is now actively incorporating traditional burning knowledge. The science caught up to the observation. It usually does, eventually. Rome. The flame that could not go out. Rome gives us the most institutional relationship with fire. In the Temple of Vesta, in the Roman Forum, a fire burned continuously for approximately 1,000 years. It was tended by the Vestal Virgins, 6 women selected between the ages of 6 and 10 who served for 30 years, living in the temple complex, maintaining ritual purity and, above all, keeping the fire alive. If the fire went out, it was considered a catastrophe. An omen of disaster for Rome itself. The Vestal who allowed it to die was flogged by the Pontifex Maximus. If she had also broken her vow of chastity, she was buried alive. These are extraordinary consequences for what is, mechanically, a fire. But the Romans understood something. The continuity of the flame was the continuity of Rome. The fire that burned in Vesta's temple was not just a fire, it was a statement. We have been burning this flame since the city began. The flame continues. Therefore Rome continues. Rome continues. Therefore the flame continues. When Rome fell, when the Western Empire collapsed in 476 CE, one of the things that ended was the Vestal flame. The fire that had burned for 1,000 years went out, and nobody relit it. Persia and Zoroastrianism. The fire that defines a religion. The Zoroastrian tradition takes the relationship with fire further than perhaps any other. Zoroastrianism is one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions, founded by the prophet Zoroaster in approximately 1500–1000 BCE in ancient Iran. In Zoroastrian theology, fire is not a symbol of the divine. Fire is the presence of the divine. Atash, sacred fire, is the embodiment of Ahura Mazda, the supreme god. Fire is pure, incorruptible, transformative. Everything it touches, it purifies. Zoroastrian fire temples maintain sacred fires that have burned for centuries. The Iransha fire, the most sacred Zoroastrian fire in the world, housed in a temple in Udvada, India, has been burning continuously since approximately the 8th century CE, over 1,200 years. The Zoroastrian community that maintains it fled Persia when Islamic conquest threatened their faith, carrying the fire with them in a ceramic vessel across the ocean to India. They carried the fire, like their ancestors had carried embers from natural blazes 1,000,000 years before. The gesture is the same, the meaning has deepened, but the instinct, preserve the flame, carry it with you, do not let it die, is as old as the species. Act 5, the plot twist. Here is where we have to be honest about the trade-off, because there was one. Fire gave you a larger brain. Fire gave you safety, warmth, community, narrative, culture. Fire gave you the ability to colonize a planet. Fire also changed your relationship with the microbial world in ways we are still calculating the cost of. You remember from last video. Your gut microbiome is less diverse than your prehistoric ancestors. Significantly less diverse. Some of that is antibiotics. Some of that is the reduction in dietary plant diversity. And some of that, specifically, the loss of certain ancient organisms that lived in human guts for hundreds of thousands of years, may trace back further. To cooking. Raw food contains living microorganisms. Many of them are harmful. Cooking kills them, which is why cooked food is safer. But some of them were not harmful. Some of them were part of the ancient relationship between the human gut and the microbial world, environmental organisms that spent millions of years calibrating your immune system, producing compounds your body had incorporated into its normal functioning. Cooking reduced that exposure. Not eliminated, your prehistoric ancestors still touched soil, still breathed outdoor air, still had far more environmental exposure than you do. But the shift from primarily raw food to primarily cooked food was a shift in the relationship with the microbial world. Your ancestor chose it. They chose it because the benefits were overwhelming. More calories, less illness, bigger brain, longer life. Nobody sat down and calculated the microbiome cost. Nobody could have. But the choice was made, and we inherited it. All of it, the brain and the trade-off. The fire that made you human also began the long process of separating you from the ancient world that shaped you. It was worth it. It is also complicated. Your prehistoric ancestors sat around a fire tonight. They were warm. They were safe. They were full, actually full, perhaps for the first time in their lives. Around them were the people they lived and hunted with, and someone was telling a story. They did not know that the fire was making their brain larger. They did not know that it was shortening their gut. They did not know that it was calibrating their immune system, disrupting their microbiome, extending their lifespan, enabling their language, making it possible for their descendants, hundreds of thousands of years later, to sit in front of a glowing rectangle and watch videos about exactly this. They just knew it was warm, and the dark was further away than it had been yesterday. That was enough. If this changed how you think about dinner, the like button is right there. Next video. We are going further into the life your ancestor actually lived, what they ate, how they slept, what their bodies were built to do versus what yours is doing now. The sleep hypothesis. It drops next week. Subscribe so you do not miss it.